Hey everybody, this is Amy Wells, Titans Amy from the Tennessee Titans.
This is Nate Bain, Titans social media manager.
Hey everybody, it's Rhett Bryan, game day host of Titans Radio, and you're listening to the Titans of the Southwest podcast with Lito and Big Mo.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our inaugural episode of the Titans of the Southwest for this season. We got a lot to cover. We have a great guest for you guys. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, my PIC, my Big Mo. Thanks for coming on here, Big Mo. Appreciate it.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. I was out for a little while. Those of you who follow me on Twitter kind of saw my tweets, and I just want to say I appreciate everybody for, reaching out and sending the prayers and well wishes. It was greatly appreciated. Glad to be back and ready to talk some Titans football, man.
Definitely. And with us today is a great friend of the show, even though we'll say his name correctly this time. We call him Uncle Rhett. In Spanish-speaking community, you guys will understand this. We're going to start calling him Theo Rhett from now on. Theo Rhett, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on for this coming out party today.
Gentlemen, it's been a minute since you guys have put a podcast episode out. I am honored to be part of the relaunch, and I'm glad that everybody is doing okay, and I'm ready to catch up on some Titans football talk, man. Let's do it.
All right. Man, we are dying. We're chomping at the bits for some Titans football talk. A lot has happened. We've got some free agency to cover. We have some draft to cover, our current 90-man roster, some cuts, and some additions, everything all in between. We got a lot to jump into, so let's just jump right on in. Just cut it with the formalities from here on out, and let's just get to what people really want to talk about and really want to hear is Titans football. So, Mo, I know you got a lot to say about the draft here. Where do you want to start? You want to start with free agency? You want to start with draft? How do you want to go, man?
We can kind of talk a little bit about the tail end of free agency, some late additions that happened prior to the draft, like Benny Logan, Mike Campanero, a receiver out of Baltimore. I think we can touch on what those two guys mean, and then kind of talk about free agents that happened after the draft, too. Benny Logan, that wasn't the defensive tackle I pictured us signing. Kind of thought we were going to be in the mix for Jonathan Hankins, who's still on the market now. But Benny Logan is a quality player. From what I've researched on him and some tape I've watched, I think he's going to be a good plug-and-play rotational guy. But I still kind of think we may still pick up Hankins if the price is right. What do you think, guys?
Nah, that's bold right there. I didn't even think about that. Do you have any kind of insight for us there, Theo Rhett, about the Hankins Benny Logan comparison? If we still might have him on our list, what do you think about that?
Well, I know that Big Mo, you were campaigning really hard for Ndamukong Suh when all that was going on.
Yes, I was.
And that didn't work out, and that is water under the bridge, as they say. Benny Logan, you got to look at just the reported numbers. It was a 1-year deal for him, $4 million, which is quite a bit of money for 1 year for a vet like him who is, in his 6th year out of LSU after spending some time with the Eagles and the Chiefs, most recently the Chiefs. You got to remember, he played in that wild card game where they, saw the Titans come back from down 19 and score, 19-0 in the second half. I think he had one tackle in that game. But with that kind of money, if that's correct, 1 year, $4 million, it's clear to me that they want to try to give him a chance to compete to be the starting nose tackle in this, because you got to remember Sylvester Williams is now gone. I think he went to Detroit maybe and signed in free agency.
Yeah, with the Lions.
And that was one that didn't really pan out and work that John Robinson picked up a year ago after signing him to a pretty decent contract. But Benny Logan, he's a good sized dude and certainly has some credentials in the previous stops that he has. It'll be interesting to see the competition at that spot and various spots along the D line there. But certainly that is one he could at least be a rotational guy. But I think with that money, I just can't help but think he is going to be having a chance to start or a chance to compete for the starting nose tackle job. And as far as Jonathan Hankins, you're right. He's still out there, and as of right now, he is available. We'll just have to wait and see what kind of pans out. Usually, used to under the old NFL clock, after June 1st was kind of the date where guys got cut and other guys got picked up. I think you're right, Big Mo, in the fact that John Robinson is going to continue to churn this roster. We talked about that the last time I was on Titans of the Southwest. And I think that, he's a guy that is constantly looking to get, as he and Coach Vrabel say, the best 53 for this thing. Not just the best fit, but the best 53. And if he is a guy that is on their radar, certainly that's a possibility. Of course, we don't know from Jonathan Hankins' camp, what kind of money they're wanting. Is that a reason why he hasn't been signed yet? Or is there any kind of an injury issue? So remains to be seen. But that Benny Logan, I think it's a decent pickup. And certainly there's going to be a lot of competition in this upcoming camp because to hear Coach Vrabel tell it, there aren't many people that are safe in this deal. I mean, you figure on one hand, there's guys that are safe. Ryan Suckup is safe. Brett Kern is safe. Marcus Mariota is safe. Jarrell Casey. I mean, your core players. But there's going to be, I think you're going to see a training camp coming up that may have a shakeup or two there. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we've already been surprised with one release. We kind of thought he was going to kind of stick around on the defensive line.
Anton Woods.
We kind of thought maybe he'd have a shot to at least compete. And so there's already been one shakeup that's kind of taken us by surprise a little bit. Interesting is you're right there. Benny Logan was signed for a little bit more. Do you think there was a possible bidding war in regards to Benny Logan for just a one-year deal, or is that just kind of just one of those things where that was his price that he set and then we happened to meet it?
That may be something that we may be able to ask John Robinson and find out. You never really know how those things go behind the scenes, but what got my attention was the $4 million for a year. It's kind of like last offseason when John Robinson picked up Darren Bates and
Brandon Trowick.
And they paid them quite a bit of money to come be headhunters on special teams. They way more than most guys at those positions make. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting too. $4 million is a lot especially for a 1-year deal. Maybe it's a deal that if they like what they see from Logan, maybe he gets an extension next year. Who knows? Or if he has a good year, he can make more money somewhere else next year. Also, you just never know how these things pan out.
This just reminds you that it's a business because you guys mentioned Antoine Woods, a good young man. Kind of befriended him a bit in his time here with the Titans, and they waived him to bring in another offensive lineman, and John Theus of the New Orleans Saints, and spent a couple of stops in other places. That's the thing that also has my attention, is how much that John Robinson has churned things up in the offensive line and through some free agency and those things. He obviously wants the best lineman out there to protect number 8.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, if we didn't go mostly all defense in the draft, it's pretty safe to say that he may have gone and picked up an offensive lineman or something because, draft was, 75% defense. And then free agency, although most of the moves that we've been doing beneath kind of the surface are those offensive linemen. So maybe he's trying to create an underswelling of competition, push Ben Jones, Quentin Spain, all those kind of people to kind of either up their game or get replaced. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of something to keep an eye on for sure.
Oh no, I was just gonna touch real quick on Anton Woods. I know he had a really good camp last year. I think he ended up contributing towards the end of the year. He got put on the main roster, if I'm remembering correctly. But I liked his chances this season because I know he was like road buddies with Jarrell Casey, and they were working out together, and I just thought he was going to be a protege that was really gonna take the next step this year. But
and in player comparisons, Mo, you're right on the money there. They both played at the same college, and he's kind of a little smaller version of Jarrell Casey in player comparison. I think you're right there. The whole offensive line thing has my attention because if you look back in free agency, they brought in Kevin Pamphile, who's an O lineman that John Robinson knew from his time when he was the director of player personnel with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he brought him through the draft process there and knows him, brought him in. You mentioned how Quentin Spain, they tendered him at the lowest value. And as about the time all that happened, here they are bringing in Xavier Suafilo, who 4 years ago with the Texans, he was a 33rd overall pick in the draft. He was our draft expert, Mike Detillier, had him as the number one rated guard coming out that year in his M&D draft guide. And he was a 33rd overall pick, so he's got a lot of experience there on the line. And immediately you saw Quentin Spain sign that tender because he's like, oh, gosh, I better, put the ink on this thing and get in here and start competing. Because as I mentioned to you the last time I was on Titans of the Southwest, I felt like the guard spot was the weaker spots on this line last year, and that Quentin Spain, while doing well in a lot of games, I felt like he just kept the competition at bay. What was on the roster there to compete with him at a spot, and that is obviously not the case now. And then Josh Klein, I was surprised that they kept him and paid him as much as they did, because I felt that Josh Klein is maybe one of the weaker spots there. Now, going to what I understand Matt LaFleur's offense might look like with zone blocking, that would attribute more to Josh Klein's skills, and he would actually perform better in it. So that would make some sense as to why they gave him a big deal. And, it was like a 4-year, $26 million deal, and I forget how much guaranteed. So, you have those things there. So there's obviously some competition to get the best protectors out in front for Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, to touch on that too, Rhett, since you mentioned Spain, how he kind of kept the competition at bay, and how for a while there, especially when we were successful with the ground and pound, that's where Spain kind of outshined Klein. But when in terms of the zone blocking, I mean, Spain wasn't really that good. And I know he had suffered with like back injury or something from last season, which could be a reason for why he played so sluggish. I mean, I've seen a lot of clips of him like on pull blocks, and I mean, the dude's not getting off the line. He's not getting off the ball. Some of that part probably due to injury, but I mean, if the style of LaFleur's offense is going to be big time zone blocking, he's gonna really have to put in some work to keep the other offensive linemen that we brought in from taking his spot, I think.
Well, Mo, your memory serves you correct, because if you will remember, or maybe we've tried to forget, that awful loss earlier in the season again in Miami, I think it was week 4.
Yeah.
And I remember our sideline reporter on Titans Radio, Jonathan Hutton, had a minute to speak with Quentin Spain as he was going to the locker room because his back had been in such bad shape or whatever. He actually, I think, came back and played the rest of that game, but just kind of powered through it best that he could. But he definitely had some issues there. And then, Ben Jones is another part of this thing too, because he had a shoulder that I think bothered him last year, and I think he had maybe something going on with his back as well. And to go back to what you guys were saying a minute ago, there was some mock drafts that had them taking a swing player because it was a really rich draft for interior offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. James Daniels from Iowa is a name that was mentioned. Frank Ragnow from Arkansas was another one that was mentioned. There was some mocks that had them taking a guy at 25 like that. Now, that's not the way they went, and so I think that John Robinson may feel like he's got the right competition in there to get this thing going, and certainly we hope that Ben Jones is well and ready to go, and all indications are that he is. So
good. That's great to hear.
We all know, obviously, Taylor Lewan set. There's no question about that. And then we have Conklin on the other side set. The only slight hesitation is the injury, and we're just kind of waiting to see how
the timetable.
Yeah, exactly. Just the timetable, how that's going to progress. But, all things considered and all things being equal, that's set as well. And then I'd like to think that Ben Jones is set right there in the middle, and especially with Vrabel coming over from Texas. He's bringing over a couple of his Texans boys over. So, you'd like to think that. And so it's the guard spots that really kind of are intriguing with all these people being brought over. And kind of touching on the Vrabel subject, he's bringing a couple guys I cannot pronounce this guy's last name correctly, but President Gaselli, is that correct? I don't know how you.
President's his last name. Are you
President.
talking
Okay,
about the
so
linebacker?
yeah. Gaselli,
Yeah.
President. Then something like it kind of gives us an indication that maybe he's bringing over either the culture or a
I think
very
it's
similar
Jamil, isn't it?
scheme. I'm not entirely sure, and I feel really,
Yeah, I think
really
it's
bad.
Jamil President.
Okay, Jamil President. I
you're
know
right. I think you're right.
I think he is. I think you are. I heard him say it on one of his conferences or one of his press videos, but I don't know if he's bringing over the culture or the scheme or a little bit of both. But kind of what are your impressions of Vrabel overall so far? I know there's a lot of hubbub about like, oh, he's only letting us talk to the draft picks and everything like that. Where do you stand on all that stuff?
Well, he's the head coach. He makes the decision. So, I mean, whatever he says, we have to abide by.
Yeah.
Now, if that means that I've got to, work a little differently and I think it is, I've got some college interns to help me this summer, as I usually do. But we're going to have to game plan and get what we need to bring you the audio we normally do on Titans Radio. And, it's entirely up to him. And knowing John Robinson and knowing where he came from, it certainly was a impact player with New England. You feel like, this is the way things are swinging. And, hey, if that's the case, then, they feel like that's, they were a product of that environment, saw the success from it. And here's the other thing. Out of the other 31 teams, I think there's only a handful that allow more access or that allow access much like what the Titans media has been used to. Most of the other 31 have a lot of closed availabilities. So, look, it's just coaches guarding what they think we might see or might say or report or do. And, hey, as long as I can get what I need, I'm in good shape. However I have to do that, that's within the parameters and rules, then that's what I'll have to do. But Coach Vrabel is he's very deliberate. He knows what he wants. I don't think there's a lot of gray area. I think it's black or white. There's been questions he's asked about why are we doing this, and I don't think you want to answer it with, well, this is the way we've always done it, because he may have a chance and a mind to change it. So we'll see what happens. But he certainly knows what he wants, and he is deliberate about it. And I'm sure he will make it known what he wants in terms of anything else with our availability.
I'd agree with that too. I mean, some people are blowing it out of proportion a little bit, I think. It's still early in the off season, but to me, what I see with the press conferences that I've watched of Vrabel is it's clear what his focus is, and it's just building the best football team possible. And that's where most of his focus is. I mean, we've read and witnessed Rashaan Evans talking about how intense the camp battles have been. If what he's doing and his style of orchestrating how he wants the press conferences to run and this and that, if that translates to winning football and being a perennial playoff team, I mean, I'm on board with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to argue with results for sure. And it is kind of more of an adapt or die kind of thing. And I think, he's changing things up a little bit. And from a media perspective, it's like, well, we've had very preferential access that a lot of the others haven't in the past. And now we just kind of have to get used to not having that anymore. So I'm a Vrabel fan. I know I've seen some tweets of people kind of comparing him to, this is kind of flashbacks of the Wiz and Hunt era. And it's let's pump our brakes a little bit, guys. Like he's perfectly fine. He's well within his rights to make these changes, and I'm completely okay with it. I love seeing him like out on the practice field and with the pads on his arms, and really getting into it with especially Evans, our first round pick, saying, okay, this is what I want from you. And that's the best way to coach somebody. You can't expect somebody to do something unless you are actually in it with them, in the trenches, and like, this is where I want your feet, this is where I want your hands, this is where I want this is what I want that, and this is the mentality that I want you to have. And it seems like Vrabel's definitely doing that with our guys. So I'm completely for it. I'm more than willing to give him a year or two to to see how this all shakes out before I start passing judgment. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah, no, I think what people have to remember is that change is always going to be uncomfortable for everybody when you're used to a certain way of things, but it's necessary. It's necessary for growth, and it's necessary to evolve. And I mean, the jerseys themselves evolved, tradition evolved. This team is evolving, and I think Vrabel's the man, the captain of the ship, leading the way to greener pastures, so to speak.
Mo, I think you said it well, and I would echo what you're saying in terms of, he had 1 year as a defensive coordinator last year with the Houston Texans. He's a first-time head coach, and, kind of like John Robinson, I'm sure he's made little mental notes and maybe even physical written on paper notes about we should do, if I'm a coach, this is what I want. And in his mind, he may be eliminating what he thinks is a potential distraction, because he wants everyone focused on football 110% of the time, and he wants to win football games worse than probably anybody in that building, including John Robinson. So the competitor in him it shows very clearly. But, yeah, I think you're right on the money, Mo. I really do.
And making our way into our picks, let's hit on the draft really quick, guys. I mean, we got two of the people that we thought we would have one shot at in the first round, which was pretty amazing. And I heard another podcast, I think it was the Post Route. I think they framed it in a way of we essentially traded our second, third, and fourth round picks for two top 20 first round picks. And I thought that was a really great way of framing it. I kind of want to hear what you guys have to think about, our entire draft, obviously, but Evans and Landry, man, those were two guys that the whole Titans universe had our eyes on for just one pick, and we got both. What do we think?
Mo, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll give my take first, because I know yours is going to be a lot more insightful than mine. Yeah.
I don't know about insightful, but more lengthy.
For me, I always love draft night, man. I'll always get antsy when it comes to where the Titans are picking. Picking late, I remember sitting there and, we trade up, we're on the clock, and I initially thought we were trading up to get Landry, because he was still on the board. And when I saw that Evans pick, I said, okay, I'm good with that. I think in my head that was a bigger hole to fill due to the fact that we still have Morgan and Rack on the outside, so we could address that, later in the draft, maybe picking up a Josh Sweat or something. That was my mentality at that point. Maybe we pick up Sweat in the second round if he's still available. So, day two comes, and I'm there, and here goes John again, trades up. I said, what's going on? Well, it has to be for Harold Landry. And then, of course, Vince Young flubbed the name at first, so I was kind of like, my brain was in shambles for a minute. I said, who did we pick? Safety from where? You know what I mean? But no, it ended up being Landry, and my wife, man, I could have picked her up and carried her on my shoulders, man. I was happy because we picked two guys that are clearly first round picks. I mean, Landry's tape didn't look solid last year, but he was playing hurt. But if you watch, but if you really watch his tape, he plays as I think Bach Lombardi painted the picture best. But he plays with the plan, and that's what I've always liked with defensive ends. They're playing with the plan. They have a toolbox of pass rush moves that they manipulate the offensive linemen into thinking one way, and then they break out another move, And so I think the combination of the two is going to be dynamite. Really like Cruikshank, really like that pick too. He's a baller. He has the right mentality that I think will just mesh perfect with the culture we're building, especially in the secondary room.
Yeah, and then Coombs. Can you imagine Crookshanks and Coombs just going at it? They're gonna be like hyped about every little thing. It's gonna be amazing. They're gonna order in for lunch, and they're both gonna be screaming at each other 2 inches from each other's face, just like Subway. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and how cool of a name is that, man? Crookshank. It just sounds like something you would want to get hit by. To me.
Yeah,
but
it's gonna be a missile.
Yeah, and then we pick up Falk. Initially, I was opposed to drafting a quarterback because, as Jim Wyatt and a lot of other people phrased it, like if you draft a quarterback, then he's taking up a roster spot for sure in most cases. So the Titans will have to be rolling with 3 quarterbacks on the 53. which I didn't necessarily want that, but I mean, I like Falk. I like the numbers that he's put up. I think he's going to be the long-term answer behind Mariota going forward. I don't think we keep Blaine another year, especially if Falk progresses as the team would like. So overall, everybody said it, quality over quantity. Really liked a lot of the undrafted free agents that we picked up. I was pulling for my boy Larry Rose, being an NMSU alum, but I mean he's with the Rams, and the Rams seem to be getting every player that I've been pushing for. But overall, I'm good, man. I was very content, very happy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what these guys can do for the football team.
Definitely. And real quick, before, like, I want to know what your grade is before we go to Theo Rhett. What do you grade us as? Because I got us as a solid A minus, like solid A minus.
Is there a letter that comes before A?
No.
Because that's what I would put it at. I would put it at a letter before A plus plus plus. Because I mean, I'm all about it. John Robinson got quality players to fill big holes, especially with the first 2 picks. I mean, what good would a 5th round backup guard do? You know what I mean? It wouldn't have made sense. I mean, it would have made sense, but would it have panned out? I mean, we already did that before. We invested the picks, man, and like I told you, I think it was our last episode we did, man, Robinson's going to get who he wants, even if it's going to cost him some capital, but he didn't have to spend future capital, which I loved.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Without spending any kind of future capital or without, hindering us in the future, Theo Rhett, what do we got? What do you think? Where are we at?
Well, first of all, Mo, good job in summarizing what happened over those 3 days of the draft and a few players after. Certainly quality over quantity in this situation. Just from when we were covering it that weekend, it was interesting to see that Thursday night at the draft party at Nissan Stadium. You see a few things up top that we kept saying, hey, and we said it right here on this podcast before. If the right things happen towards the top, someone will be sitting there at 25 or in the neighborhood that you were not expecting to be there. And I think that's exactly the case with Rashaan Evans, because if you look at what the Cleveland Browns did at number 4, taking Denzel Ward, the quarterback from Ohio State, right there 4th overall, when everybody in the world thought, well, that's Bradley Chubb right there to go with Myles Garrett, in that Greg Williams defense. And then the big one for me is that crazy trade that the New Orleans Saints traded up, I forget how many spots, to take Marcus Davenport, who is probably the poster child for the all potential team in this thing. Now, he may end up being a fantastic player, but we all thought that night on Titans Radio, we thought, well, they're trading up to get Lamar Jackson. They're going to get a successor.
That's what I thought too.
For Drew Brees eventually, because that's the kind of capital you give up for those kinds of things. So, little things like that. And all of a sudden, there you are at number 22, and boom, trade alert. And so he trades up 3 spots with Ozzie Newsome in his last draft as general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, and Rashaan Evans is the pick. And you said it right there. You said something, Mo. You said, I was all right with that. This is one of the few picks I can remember in the time that I've been covering this team where everybody said, man, I like that pick, or I'm okay with that pick. Nobody really complained about it for a couple of reasons. One, you mentioned the need, and you're exactly right. You have a need there, and you like the quality of player there. And, to go back to your Luke Falk comment about, you draft a quarterback, you're going to carry 3 quarterbacks. Rashaan Evans can play inside linebacker, be a pass rusher there, and get after the quarterback if he needs to be. That's the thing we're going to be interesting to see, is all the movable parts in Dean Pease defense in this deal. But to get Rashaan Evans right there, we were elated, no doubt about it. We were high-fiving. It was good stuff. Yeah. And then, you go into night 2, that Friday night, and you're right. I mean, you're sitting, I thought the Cleveland Browns are sitting here at 33 and 35, and they're going to take Harold Landry or somebody. Harold Landry is sitting there at 41, and so John Robinson gives up number 57 and number 89, trades up 16 spots with the Oakland Raiders, takes Harold Landry. Harold Landry came on with us on Titans Radio that night and thank goodness we hit the dump button. We were running a delay, but he cursed. I mean, he was so happy. I said, "What was it like when you got that phone call?" And he dropped an S-bomb on us.
Oh,
And,
I like
yeah,
it.
I mean, but he was elated. He thought this is the one place that he really wanted to go, and that he wanted to be a Titan. And getting those two guys in the first 41 picks with the capital you talked about, Mo, is incredible to me. And then day 3, John Robinson makes a third and final trade. He moves up from 162 to 152, 10 spots to trade again with the Baltimore Ravens to take Dan Cruikshank from Arizona, who this is kind of a stretch to say, but he's kind of a poor man's Minka Fitzpatrick. He's been asked to play many different things in that secondary.
He can do it all.
In Arizona. And to talk to a former defensive coach here in Chuck Cecil, who is now with Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards, right.
He says Cruikshank can be a cornerback. He thinks he can be a corner in this deal. I think he's a safety. I think he contributes immediately on special teams, and he is a thumper. The guy, you're right about the name. It sounds like you just don't want to run into that. And he is a guy that will absolutely pop you. He's good size. I like that pick a lot. And then, you know, ironically, pick 199 in round 6, the same place Tom Brady was taken 18 years before. Luke Falk, the big Tom Brady fan who applies the TB12 method in terms of training and diet and exercise. You know, they take him from Washington State. He owns most of the Pac-12 passing records, which is impressive in and of itself. But the thing that impressed me about him is the same kind of MO that John Robinson has with getting these guys in that had little or no offers, 0 to 1 star recruits in college, and they come in and just kill it, because Luke Falk was the 2017 Burlsworth Trophy Award winner. That's for the nation's top former walk-on. He was a walk.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that either. I thought Baker Mayfield would have won something like that, but that's interesting.
But Luke Falk, you know, he's got his challenges ahead of him, because most of what he did in the shotgun formation. So he's got some learning to do. He knows that. But I would agree with you, Mo, in that I think he'll make a good backup quarterback in this thing. And even if you have Blaine Gabbert for 2 years till he gets, ready to come along, so be it. But that's a solid draft class, and certainly those first 2 picks, I just keep looking at this Titans defense, and it gets scarier by the day. We talked, about the early free agent acquisitions with Malcolm Butler going into that secondary that on paper might be a top 5 secondary. And then to add a guy like Rashaan Evans and Harold Landry. And hey, here's a couple of things that stands out about the whole Harold Landry thing. In the post-draft press conference with Coach Vrabel and with John Robinson, they said Landry, the thing that got their attention, that he was very quick to pick up on coaching, because you guys mentioned how hands-on that Coach Vrabel is in terms of working guys out. He'll put that umpire pad on his chest and he pops with those guys and gets, their footwork right and their technique and their stances right. He said he was immediately picking up on coaching in those aspects to try to make himself a better player. That impressed them a lot. And I like that stuff there for sure. I like the draft class. And then some of these undrafteds, Akram Wadley, the running back from Iowa, has my attention.
He's good.
That guy had 2,190 yards and 20 touchdowns in his last 2 years at Iowa. And he can catch it out of the backfield, which is something you're going to see from these tailbacks in this offense for sure. Sharif Finch, the linebacker from Temple, who played, his college career with Hassan Reddick, who was a high draft pick last year. I like him. That's right. That's exactly right. And there's some other intriguing names. Great story that hopefully we will get to tell is Joseph Esty, the cornerback from University of Tennessee Martin, he's a Kenner, Louisiana native, but through a lot of troubles with his family, his sister, I think, had a lot of trouble. He is raising his 2 nephews right now, 2 young boys. This guy is a grown man in terms of how to handle things with life, and he is That's an impressive story that I hope we get to tell. And then you pick up he was a tryout at rookie minicamp and has been awarded a contract to try to compete in training camp. Another guy with the same situation was a tryout player, Robert Spillane, a linebacker from Western Michigan, who played with Corey Davis in college. And he's an interesting story. His grandfather, and this Robert Spillane kid from Western Michigan, his grandfather is John Latner, who won the 1953 Heisman Trophy at Notre Dame. So he has some lineage in his family with some decent playing in college football already. And the other one, too, the wide receiver from Southern Cal, Deontay Burnett.
Oh, Deontay Burnett.
Yeah, you go look at what he did in the Rose Bowl a while back and the Cotton Bowl. He set records in both of those. So showing up in big games like that. Now, he's a small guy. He probably needs to add some weight in there. I'm sure he's probably a slot receiver because he's not a huge dude. But there's some names in that group. And because you only drafted 4 guys, you've got some guys in 2 or 3 spots and maybe some names I mentioned that have a chance to make this roster.
Deontay Burnett kind of, whenever I watched him play, I saw like a young Campanaro, like solid hands and solid slot receiver. He's not going to blow the top off of anything, but he is just really shifty and really good. So I was really happy about Burnett there. Akim Wadley, I was with you. I was kind of on the Rose train there because of NMSU. He's a local kid and was just blown away. I was so happy for that. And I sent out a tweet and I stand by that tweet. Like he understands angles and he understands it all, but it may just not be what we're looking for. And then whenever I see tape on Wadley, it's like, oh yeah, he's better, but I like
more
Rose.
physical tools a little bit.
Yeah, he's shifty, and he'll be a really good number 3, which I think will knock Fluellen kind of off the roster and into the open seas there a little bit. I'm with you guys. I absolutely love what we did. The only reason I gave it A- is just because there wasn't more than 4 picks, but the 4 picks we got were just completely solid. And every time I see Landry, I was watching the draft on NFL Network, so every time I see Landry's little, his dip, I think of Mayuk's I dip, you dip, we dip little line, whenever, which I thought was just absolutely perfect. So every time I see him, I think of that. I don't think of the honor thing, which is just, Vince Young couldn't read defenses very well, so it's kind of hard to think that, it's high expectations to think he can read a name card all that great.
Hey, Lito, let me tell you one little quick story about that when all that happened that Friday night of the draft. So, Mo, you mentioned, you're like, who did we take?
Yeah.
So we're sitting there. We do a studio show that night for rounds 2 and 3, and in the studios of 104.5 The Zone, our flagship's home of Titans Radio. And so Vince says honor, and then he stands on that and says honor again, honor Landry. And I look at Mike. Mike looks at me, Mike Keith, the voice of the Titans, and we are terrified because here we have spent all of this time putting together these thumbnail players, that audio that I was telling you, every time we pick somebody, we put those things together. He studies relentlessly. I try to study as much as I can while putting everything together. And we're like, oh, my Lord, they have drafted this person. We don't know who this person is. I don't know anybody in this draft class named Honor. I don't know what school he's from. And then finally, we have a monitor there in the studio, and it flashed up Harold Landry. Oh, my gosh, we got Harold Landry. Well, that's a relief. And something really that we got an excellent player there. And, you mentioned it, Mo. Harold Landry he led the NCAA in quarterback sacks 2 years ago with 16 and a half.
Yep.
Did not have to come back to school, but decided to come back for his senior season, had some injury issues there. Had he not come back for his senior season, he would have probably been the second pass rusher taken in the 2017 draft. He would have been the guy after Myles Garrett. And so you're talking about a guy, he might have been a top 10 pick, maybe top 5 if somebody just goes crazy that night. So to think that you got him a year later at pick 41, and look, with the health part of the things, John Robinson said in the post-draft press conference, he said, I'm no doctor. We have a whole medical staff here, and they said he's good to go. He's cleared. So they're a lot smarter than I am. And so I said, yeah, good. So let's take him.
Yeah, one thing I want to add real quick about about that receiver that we got from USC, Deontay, is that how you say his first name?
Yeah, Deontay Burnett.
What I noticed about him over the past couple of years, because I first saw him in 2016, I said, man, this guy has a reliable set of hands. You know, he didn't have the biggest numbers. He popped just because he always found a way to get open despite being like 6 foot, $165 or $170. I don't know what he weighs. But then last year, he was a very reliable target for Darnold. He was a very reliable target and put up over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. I mean, he has a shot. He has a shot to make the roster, for sure, I believe.
Oh, easily. And also the safety from Ohio State, he's got familiarity with Coombs. He's got a good shot of making the roster as well. I mean, we got our undrafted free agents. I mean, Finch was he was either top 5 or top 10 in highest paid undrafted free agents. So that just kind of tells you we really targeted him. We wanted him. So I think a good amount of our undrafted free agents are going to be on the roster this coming year for sure.
Yeah, and what's good about that is those are players that are going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. Plus, you're going to have Harold Landry playing with a chip on his shoulder, man, because of all the teams that passed him up. Mm-hmm. I mean, in his mind, he's a first rounder. He should have been the top pass rusher selected. So we're going to have a guy with those thoughts in his head wreaking havoc whenever he gets some snaps.
It's going to be a beautiful year, guys.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful.
It's a beautiful year. It really is. I mean, we knew our defensive backfield was stacked and loaded and ready to go, and our major concerns coming into this year was pass rusher and inside linebacker with Williamson going for the Jets. And, you know, Evans is one of those meat and potatoes kind of pickups. You know, he's exactly what we need. He fills the entire spot. And I saw there's a documentary series on him on YouTube about like his whole path to the draft. And it's really interesting. If you guys haven't watched it, it's definitely recommended. It talks about, you know, it follows him from before the draft, during the draft, and then after he gets picked up by the Titans. They're like 10, 15 minutes each, but it just shows the kind of character he is. You know, he is going to be that Keith Bullock of the common era. And it's so much fun. I just cannot wait for this coming season. I really, really can't. Because before, if Arakpo or Morgan went down, it was like, oh, man.
We're in trouble.
Well, yeah, guys, you know, we talked about it the last time I was with you both about how both of those guys, Morgan and Arakpo, are, you know, Arakpo's 32. Morgan will be 30 this year. They're both in the final years of their 4-year contracts. So, you know, that's something to pay attention to and watch there. So you needed to get something because, you know, we still don't know what Kevin Dodd is or how far along he is or whether he will continue to develop. So it was a place, you know, where they can pick up a guy, and Harold Landry is certainly somebody that now if Dodd would come along, now the rich get richer in this situation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know? Yep. And it's take a step back just a second on Deontay Burnett. He set a Cotton Bowl record. 12 catches, 139 yards, and I think he caught 2 touchdowns in that ball game. He tied a Rose Bowl record when they were in the Rose Bowl the year before with 3 receiving touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. So they call him Big Play Tay, and I guess that's why.
Yeah, he adjusts to the ball in the air like ridiculous. Like you watch a lot of his catches, he makes those body adjustments.
Yeah,
exactly. And then another pickup that we got undrafted, which is kind of interesting to me, and I don't know if you have any kind of insider information on this there, but Ethan Wolf, tight end out of Tennessee, it's kind of interesting because do you know? And I'll pose because Rhett, you'll likely know this one, but I'm going to pop quiz you, Mo. He holds records for the University of Tennessee. Do you know who he passed in those records?
It's Jason Witten, right?
Jason Witten. He passed Jason Witten, and I see him kind of. He's not going to blow the roof off of anything, but I mean, if he sticks around, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he might just be a stable force in the tight end, room as Jonnu Smith grows, and I think Jonnu Smith has a higher ceiling. Ethan Wolf could be that stable.
I think you're right on the money there, man. I think with Wolf, he was kind of underutilized under Butch Jones.
Yeah.
So I don't think we saw his true. Oh yeah, well, a lot of people were underutilized with Vic. But I think he has a chance to stick too, man. Especially if he proves to be reliable. I mean, Witten had a very lengthy career, and he wasn't the fastest guy out there. You know what I mean? But he managed to get open. He managed to always let his hands do the work. Was a chain mover. I mean, if Wolf broke his record, there's got to be something to it there.
Yeah. Well, what do you got to say there on Ethan Wolf there, Mr. Bryan?
It's a nice pickup. As far as an undrafted, and I think it just depends on how many tight ends they carry in this deal, because I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of 2 tight end sets.
No.
I think you'll see much more towards an 11 personnel, a 3 wide receiver set, 1 tailback, 1 tight end kind of deal with Matt LaFleur. And you got to remember, you still have Jonnu Smith, who is coming off of an MCL injury. Now, he didn't require surgery or anything. He hurt that thing in the Patriots game, and I think he was, needed some rest for about 6 weeks. I think he's fine now. And you still have the man, Delaney Walker. And,
he's not going nowhere.
And Philip Supernall, the demon on special teams. So, you still have things there. So, but Ethan Wolf could, who knows? I mean, again, we talked about the level of competition going to this thing, and I can't wait for training camp, because I can just see fistfights galore in this deal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so that's kind of an interesting thought here. Supernaw, does he bring that much more than Stalker to kind of stay on to supplant him and be for sure the number 3 tight end in your mind? Or does Stalker, because I know Stalker kind of drifts back to fullback, and I'm not familiar with if LaFleur uses fullback a whole lot in his schemes.
And you bring up an excellent question, Lito, because that was the reason they brought in Luke Stalker to help in that whole situation last season with that scheme. So is he going to be, not necessarily obsolete, but is he going to be outmoded because there's a change in offensive philosophy there? I think that's, there's a lot of unknowns in this thing. We don't know what this offense is exactly going to look like. We don't know what the defense is exactly going to look like, because we haven't had a whole lot of time to try to see things. And, they've got organized team activities coming up soon. They have a mini camp June 12th through the 14th. That's the big one where everybody's there doing their thing before they all, depart to go on vacation and come back, 5-6 weeks later to get ready for training camp. So there's a lot to be answered. We're going to figure it out. We're going to find it out. But right now, there's still some things that are up in the air.
It's a good time to be a Titans fan, though. Like, I just keep going back to that, man. Like, holy cow. There's going to be so many bandwagoners this coming few years that I can't wait. Like, and I welcome them all. Like, I don't shame them all at any means. Like, I welcome any bandwagoners at this point, because it's like, it's okay. That's okay. It's all right. We're a small market team. You have a pass, but now is the time. We have J-Rob at the helm. We have Miss Strunk, guiding things and overseeing everything. And we have Vrabel, who seems like a very no-nonsense person, and I love that. He doesn't bend to anybody's will but his own, and I'm okay with that in a head coach, because whenever I played football, we had some people who were just lackadaisical, and kind of equate it to like a managerial standpoint, where the managers who try to be your friends aren't always the best managers for the final product, but the managers who come in and just get it done, and if you happen to get along with them and if you happen to agree with them, then cool, but they're going to take you to the top. And that's what I see in Vrabel. Like, he doesn't care if you like him. He doesn't care if you are happy with his press conferences. He just comes in, he does his business, and he's like, my office is on that field right out there. And that's what it seems like with Vrabel. So I can't wait. I'm every single day I'm dying like of thirst. I'm like a guy wandering the desert. I'm watching old highlight videos of Titans and Corey Davis and Adoree Jackson and stuff like this at this point, and Mariota, just trying to get my Titans fix at this point. I cannot wait for this coming season.
And you mentioned the 2 players that must have a better 2018 than they did a 2017 to make all of this work.
Yes.
Marcus Mariota and Corey Davis.
Yep.
I think the rest will take care of itself, but those two must be better. And I think we started to see glimpses of that, certainly in that playoff game against New England. Corey Davis has two scores there. And I think we all know what we believe what he can do. He's just got to stay healthy and do it. And the health is the biggest part of it, because I think the other part will be there.
Yeah, and they both have healthy off seasons, which is something that Mariota has never had, and that Corey Davis hasn't technically had before. But this is only his second off season. They both have healthy off seasons where they don't have to worry about rehab. They don't have to worry about their physical body. They just need to learn the playbook, which is a perfect timing because we have new playbooks. They just have to worry about that, and then just worry about the field, and that's all they need to worry about. But what we want to do is we want to take a quick break, and we're going to wrap up with the mentality of Vrabel and the Titans kind of going forward, and then we'll send everybody out on that note.
Follow us on Twitter at Titans Southwest, and remember to like and subscribe to the podcast, as well as review and share.
So here we are. We have a few more things we want to touch on before we wrap this up. I know we left off talking about Mike Vrabel and the whole mentality that he's kind of bringing to Nashville and to the team as a whole. With him having that New England background, with him pairing up with J-Rob having that New England background, but they're also bringing in people from the Texans organization and bringing in people, like we said previously, that may not have been high on people's board that are just hungry, though. Are there any real big differences that you see, that are kind of changes and noticeable changes that would be beneficial, maybe not worse, but just different going forward, that you see kind of boots on the ground and obviously in Titans Radio, which is a great follow. If you guys don't follow them or listen to them, you really are missing out. Is there any differences that you see there, Mr. Bryan?
Just the intensity level is the first thing I've noticed. Kerry Combs, the secondary coach, and Coach Vrabel, these guys, it's all about the pace, and let's not waste time, and let's learn it and get it right the first time, and let's keep moving and moving. Even if a guy is taking a water break, he's taking a brief one, and there's something going on all the time. You're constantly doing something. You're not standing there with hands on hips, or you're not standing there lull and idle in terms of just a player that players that I observe and how all that goes. They're not wasting any time, none whatsoever. It's now or never. And, hadn't seen a ton of things, the bulk of the OTAs and the bulk, the mini camp and then obviously training camp down the road. So I'll get a better idea of that, but that's the intensity level and the speed, and those things immediately stand out.
Pretty soon you're going to be finding empty water cups with plays drawn on them. That way they really capitalize on the water breaks. There's going to be some of Matt LaFleur's doodles on the side of a foam cup there in the field.
That would be awesome. If you ever see one of those, you have to tweet it out there. You just have to, because we called it, or Mo called it, but we're an entity, so I'm going to say we called it. So if you ever see one of those, you have to take. We are one. You have to take a picture.
Here's Matt LaFleur's Dixie cup.
Exactly. Called by the Titans of the Southwest. Bam.
Yeah.
That'd be so great. And it does seem like, there's no really downtime. If you're here, you're working, and this is what we're going to do. And I love it so much. I can't express how much I actually love it. And I don't know if there's words for it, because it's just efficiency. It's a model of efficiency. And what I wonder, and I don't think I'm worried about it, but I think I'm more curious, is if Vrabel is kind of trying to replicate, or because it seems like he's been chomping at the bit to be a head coach for I don't know how long, but even in his opening press conferences, he was saying, I'm the head coach. This is what it's going to be. Like, he established that from the very beginning, and he is keeping that tone all the way through. So maybe just kind of, what do you think about his mentality about the whole thing of like, hey, this is the way it's going to be, and do you see that kind of arrow?
Oh, well, you certainly hope that that's the case, or they wouldn't have made a coaching change. So,
yeah.
But by the same token, he's never been a head coach before, so there's going to be trial and error. Nobody has a perfect
sure.
batting average. I mean, you think of it that way. We talked about John Robinson. Listen, all those, I can visualize seeing John Robinson driving down the roads of America looking for whatever prospect when he was a regional scout for the New England Patriots. And he had a lot of time in that car by himself, away from his family, at moments that he told us before, he almost quit a couple times because it was just a grind. And I'm sure whatever he spent in those nights living out of a suitcase, hotel to hotel, motel to motel, that he had notes about, if I'm ever a general manager, I will do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And I will do this, because he just constantly is evaluating. And I think Vrabel has that same type of personality and mold, persona. I think that's why I think they will get along very well as a tandem in the top of this football chain, and on the football side of it, non-business side of the franchise. It's going to be interesting to watch. And look, John Robinson has set it up on the tee. He's got to knock it off the tee and put it over the wall for a home run. So the pressure's all on him and his coaching staff. It's that simple.
Yeah, well, for me, I think the pieces just fit perfectly in terms of Vrabel's success going forward and how his personality fits. He's a clear-cut leader of men, which is the main thing John Robinson echoed during the short-lived coaching search. But you look at the pieces around him, you got the brain of Matt LaFleur, who's been a piece of success everywhere he's been employed. And then you have the veteran, experienced, seasoned Dean Pease leading the defense, who always seemed to have a top 10 defense anywhere he's coached, for Vrabel to lean on while he, implements his own changes that he wants to the defense. Then you got the fire of Kerry Coombs, which, him and Vrabel, I can see them headbutting each other before they will run out to the field. You know what I mean? The intensity is going to be up. But all the pieces surrounding them, the trust that John Robinson has clearly put into Vrabel, I think it's all built to be a very successful team. And I mean, there's a little fandom speaking there, a little homerism, but I really honestly do think the pieces are perfect. The pieces fit just right. Like, had it been, I know LaFleur will probably be successful as a head coach later down the line. But had LaFleur been hired as the head coach and Mike Vrabel been hired as the defensive coordinator, I don't know if it would have worked as well. I just think the way everything kind of formed, it's almost the perfect storm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, because if you put it all together, you're right. It would have been kind of backwards the way. So you look at fiery, which is Coombs, which I don't know if any assistant coach has ever been more loved than Coombs already without having to take a single snap. The brain of LaFleur, the experience of Pease, and the leadership of Vrabel. Like, if you were to be able to, like, say, this is all the pieces I want, just the characteristics, this is what I want, the brain, the leadership, the experience, the fieriness, all of this, we have it all on one umbrella of coaching staff, which is, I mean, you're right, it's a team, it's a whole thing, and it's so amazing. Have you had any experience with Coombs, or have you kind of seen any instances or stories that you can kind of tell us about with kind of touching on those there, Mr. Bryan?
I haven't had a whole lot of interaction with him. He is certainly high intensity. He is a walking, talking giant. Yeah, he's like just a big bucket of Mountain Dew and all the caffeine within it. Certainly the way he has worked those DBs and what little I've seen, absolutely, he is intense. But you guys and Mo, you hit on something there with this coaching search, and you talked about if it was reversed. Think about this coaching search to get to Vrabel. They interview Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator of the Panthers, who is now the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. They interview Matt LaFleur to be the head coach of the Titans. They interview Mike Vrabel. And it was smart on their part to come in and interview LaFleur, because whether it was under a different guise or whatever, but you're like, okay, well, Vrabel's our guy. I'm going to pencil him in, John Robinson says. And then it's like, well, I know exactly who the offensive coordinator can be. It's that other guy we interviewed. His name is Matt LaFleur. So you talk about, a successful coaching search in terms of your candidates you're looking at. One's a head coach in another town, and the other two guys one's your head coach, one's your offensive coordinator. So you made me think of something there, and I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to landing both Evans and Landry.
Yes.
You get 2 first-rounders in strange fashion. And, I mean, you get 2 guys that you interviewed for the head coaching job on the same staff. I mean, that takes a lot of persuasion, I think. That takes a craftiness that I don't know many GMs that can pull that. How do you bring a guy back that you interviewed for the head coach and have him comfortable enough to say, you know what, I am comfortable enough to be the OC and, call the plays and rejoin? I mean, that's crazy to me. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's a really good way to look at it.
And here's another way to look at it. And this one is not necessarily negative, but something you got to think about. If this thing starts off immediately with a huge success, you may have Matt LaFleur for your offensive coordinator for only one season because he gets a head coaching job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that's the downside of it.
That's a possibility in this whole thing if it goes really, really well, catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, and I think what's one of the main worries that a lot of people, I know for sure myself, has had with LaFleur. Like, we want him to do really well, but like not too well. But like really, really well, but not like too well. Like, we want you to be really good, but good enough to kind of stick around, but not good enough to get poached and go somewhere else. But like what we got to hope for at the very end is if it is just a one and done with us, that he instilled enough in all the offensive players, especially Mariota, to kind of take what they learned from him and keep going, and I think that's one of the main concerns I had with him. But you're right, it is 2 first-round picks.
I hope if it is one and done, I hope it ends with a Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Great.
That is a completely acceptable way to do it a one and done, by the way. I just want that on record. It is, if he goes one and done, but he's holding up a Lombardi Trophy, I'm okay with it. Like,
yeah.
I think
I can only hope that is the case, Mo,
yeah.
Because that's something. I went to that first one in January of 2000, and it's been a long time since then. And you see how long it took the Philadelphia Eagles to win the first one in their franchise, and the thought of that, whew, I mean, that's just
big time.
It's so big time.
Just the thought of Broadway going, like, just seeing Broadway at like after a Lombardi Trophy. Broadway would be like a 48-hour party, just constantly. And Broadway is just the main strip with all the bars and everything. Like, I would drive up there as soon as we held up the Lombardi Trophy. As soon as the clock hit triple zeros, I'd be like, I'm going, because I know it's still going to be there. Like, oh man, Nashville would come alive. I mean, they come alive for the Predators just making, the finals and stuff like that. Can you imagine the Titans?
Well, you think about the night of the uniform reveal. I mean, yes, there was a concert for Florida Georgia Line, but there were 20,000 people in downtown Nashville on a very cool early spring night, on a school night. And listen, there were officials from the NFL there in a scouting form to kind of gauge a litmus test in this whole thing for the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, the reports must have been good, because you guys have seen the reports and the tweets, and from everything I understand, barring something crazy, the 2019 NFL draft will probably be in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Man.
We get the date on that so we could plan our trip, Lito. We got to...
Oh no, we're definitely
coordinate something.
We'll be going up there for, and like you said, I mean, it seems like from all accounts that we're it. Like,
we're the front runners for sure.
We are the front runners, unless something absolutely crazy happens. We're it. And
you would
I
be
cannot
talking
wait.
about April 25th through 27th, 2019, if they keep it under the same format.
Okay, so I'm on southwest.com right now, and oh my gosh, that would be so great. And you know, with the draft in Nashville, it's going to put us on the spot because we're a smaller market team. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We are a smaller market than, you know, Tampa or Dallas or New York or LA, but essentially kind of on the same vein of draft is quality. We may not have the biggest actual market of quantity, but quality. And you see people like Nate Burleson on Good Morning Football, and everybody's like, no, Nashville's actually pretty legit. Like they it's kind of like a side conversation at the point, but if we actually land the draft and we get ink to paper on that, it would just be absolutely changing for the franchise in general, because we're there and people will have cameras there and we'll have people writing stories. And, you know, Dallas, everybody knows Dallas. New York, everybody knows New York. Philadelphia, it did a huge boost for them. But the draft
and Titans Radio would be there, I promise you.
Oh, Titans Radio would definitely be there. And if you're not there, you're tuning into Titans Radio for that.
Let me give you a couple of stats about Nashville, Tennessee. First of all, I'm a resident of Middle Tennessee, grew up in a town 30 miles southeast of Nashville, but I've been to Nashville off and on my whole life. And Nashville is one of the cities in the United States of America. It's incredible, the growth and the expansion. There are cranes downtown by the dozens because they're building high-rises, apartments, condos, corporate office buildings, what have you. There are roughly 100 people a day moving to Metro Davidson County, Nashville, Tennessee. Oh, wow. And here's the fun one out of this whole thing, and you see this when you go to downtown Nashville. It's the number 2 destination for bachelorette parties, right behind Las Vegas, which it just is mind-boggling to me. I don't understand that part of it, but apparently there's an appeal there. But there are bachelorette parties walking around downtown Nashville daily, multiple parties. But Nashville has really grown, and people, and you mentioned it with the hockey, people have gotten a little taste of it, and they want to go see it. And I think that has a lot in favor for the Titans and for Nashville with this whole draft thing, because I feel like the draft is being awarded to a lot of places that will never host a Super Bowl. Now, this year's draft at AT&T Stadium and Jerry World is an exception to the rule, but you know, you look at, they had it in Chicago for a couple of years, and then Philadelphia last year. Any open air stadiums like that outside of, you know, MetLife Stadium, climate wise, you know, Nashville probably will never host a Super Bowl, and it's more about availability with hotel rooms and that kind of thing than it is the venue and the climate. But those are other factors. But yeah, listen, this announcement's coming pretty soon because the owners' meetings are May 22nd and 23rd in Atlanta, and I will be anxiously awaiting, just like I know the two of you will too.
Oh, yes, sir.
Definitely. And you're right. It's whenever we went out there was just cranes everywhere. It's exploding. It's amazing. And I think we legitimately, like 100%, no hyperbole, we ran into like 2 bachelorette parties whenever we were just walking down Broadway. It was amazing. They all had their pink cowboy hats with their little blow lights and stuff like that. It's a destination city that you have to go to understand. And once you understand it, you tell everybody who will listen to you about how great Nashville actually is, in Tennessee, and it's greener than you think, and, you know, the people are nicer than you would think, and like all of this stuff, it's so above and beyond. And I think that the master chess player that J-Rob and Mrs. Strunk are, they knew that when doing the uniform reveal of just like, let's put on a show, let's show them that we can do this. And it just blew up, and it just kind of took a life of its own. So I can't wait. If I was a betting man, I would put money on Nashville being the draft spot for next year.
I feel like the uniform reveal kind of put the final cement in this thing. I really believe that, because I mean, it is the best production value thing that I've seen the Titans do. They nailed it. the whole deal. They had everything right and did it correctly, and it was impressive. And obviously it made an impression with the folks in New York with the National Football League.
So, Mo, whenever we go out there, we're going to party it up right, because there's just a party. You throw a rock in any direction and you're going to hit 4 great places. Like, it's absolutely amazing. You would absolutely love it.
Oh, I can't wait, man. Once I just cross into that Tennessee border, it's going to be a hell of an experience for me, man. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait, man.
Very, very surreal. All right, so real quick, let's kind of go over the schedule for this coming year. We'll do kind of a rapid fire. We'll take it a quarter at a time, foregoing the preseason. We have at Miami, and then we're hosting the Texans, and then we have at Jacksonville, and then we're hosting the Eagles. Do you have anything that sticks out to you guys on either of those 4?
It's a tough opening month. I mean, you've got 2 out of those 4 on the road, 2 division games, and the world champion Philadelphia Eagles. It's a tough month, period.
Yeah, for sure. I would have to agree. But here's how I would guess the first 4 games go. I could see it being either a 2-2 split or 3-1, and I think the one loss being to the Eagles, because I think they're just right now they're a lot more stacked than the Titans are on both sides of the ball.
Well, I would sign up for that and take that in a minute, because that means you're 2-0 out of the gate in the AFC South. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I see it, and I kind of like that the first game is in Miami, just because of how horrible the Miami game was last year. I think that's the perfect team to start the season with, and the perfect throat for Vrabel to put his foot on to say, you know what, we're here, we're not playing games, and I think it will definitely set the tone for the next 3 games.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with anything there. And like you said, it's sweeping the division for the first 4, so I'm completely all on board with that. So next 4 we have is at Buffalo, and then we're hosting the Ravens, and then we have at the Chargers in L.A. I almost said San Diego. We have at L.A. and then at Dallas.
4 games of Bills, Ravens, Chargers, and Cowboys. That's 3 AFC teams, and we saw it last year. We had to kind of beat out the Ravens and the Chargers in getting the playoff spot. For me, in that 4-game stretch, I like it. I like us going 4-0. I know it sounds a little homerism, but I really think we can, and I think we cap it off by beating Dallas on primetime TV. And I think we're sitting pretty halfway through the season.
Well, you got the travel situation with the Chargers game, because remember, that's at Wembley Stadium.
Oh, yeah,
in
that's
London,
in London,
England.
right?
Yeah, that's the London game. But you have an immediate bye week after that, and then you face the Cowboys at Jerry World on Monday Night Football. And guys, that right there, that game tells me the progress going forward, how far this team has come in 2 years. When the Titans are on the schedule and you're playing Dallas Monday night in Dallas, that tells me you're moving. The compass is pointing north.
Everybody's watching that game.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a little litmus test for us to see kind of where we are, what we do. We may have lost a couple prior to that, but this is going to be the one that kind of, it's our measuring stick. I can see that for sure. We're hosting the Patriots. We go to Indianapolis, and then we go to Houston. And we host the Jets.
For me,
Mo, I'm gonna take this one real quick, because this is the toughest quarter of this schedule right now. It may end up being exactly that, because you're talking at Dallas Monday night, then back in Nashville to host the AFC champion Patriots, then back on the road to host to play the Colts, and then another Monday night you're going back to Texas. You're going to Houston to play your division rival Houston Texans on Monday Night Football. So you have 2 division games, you have 2 Monday night games, both away, and you're hosting the AFC champion Patriots. That's the toughest month by far out of this deal.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. The next 4 opponents all being AFC, short turnaround week to play the Patriots. It helps that we're hosting the Patriots. I would like to think There's a chance that game could get flexed depending on where both teams stand during that month. But, I mean, it would benefit the Titans if it gets flexed either to the late afternoon or even the Sunday night game. I don't, who knows if that happens or not. But for me, it's the toughest chunk of the season, and it's 4 AFC games. So, I mean, I really don't have a prediction in terms of like 2-2, 3-1, or whatever, because I really don't know. That's going to be a hard chunk because the Jets are no slouch either. They're building a solid defense there in New York, and I mean, I think our offense would be a little bit better than the Jets, but that's going to determine whether we make the playoffs or not that month alone.
That's going to be a rough one for sure.
2 division opponents. Man.
Yeah. So the next 4 is we host the Jaguars, we go to New York to face the Jets, and we host the Redskins or the Washington team, and then we also host the Colts, which again it's the Colts. So does that month worry? Does that quarter worry us as much, or how does that impact us? You think?
Lito, I think where you're looking at here, this is where the schedule gods have kind of shined on the Titans in this deal, because 4 out of your last 5 are at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. That's a big deal, especially that late in the season where you're trying to get crucial wins to jockey your position to make a postseason run. That's a big deal looking at this from kind of a 30,000-foot view.
It's going to be interesting to wrap up the season facing the Colts as opposed to the Jaguars. It's one of those things where, from a fan-to-fan perspective, I think a lot of people would rather Colts fans than to Jaguars fans, just because of the way a lot of Jaguars fans are perceived. But the team, though, we still don't know how Luck is going to turn out, and that's at the end of the season. So, I mean, he still hasn't even thrown a football. So it's the Jaguars' defense is great. The Colts are a complete enigma at this point. We don't know what's going to be good, what's going to be not, what's going to be whatever.
Guys, Andrew Luck hasn't thrown a football in over 500 days.
That's wild.
Yeah, let's look at it that way. Now, here's some observations of the season in whole. Obviously, the biggest thing about this schedule is it's a product that you want, because it shows that you are winning games. You've made a playoff appearance. So overall, the schedule is tough. Your opponents are tough. It's a tough deal. You have both Super Bowl teams. You obviously have your regulars in the AFC South, and you got some other teams that are pretty stout in there. But it's favorable in these ways. If you'll look at it, there's only 1 point in the season where it's back-to-back road trips. The at Indianapolis and at Houston in week 11 and 12. Everything else is home away, home away, home away, or you have a bye week wedged in between 2 road games and the London deal and on Monday night at Dallas. So the schedule has been favored in this type of thing, because the furthest west you're going is to Dallas. The furthest east, obviously, would be London. But you don't have a bunch of road games back-to-back. And when you're talking about jet lag and time changes and all that going to the London game, the week before is a home game against the Ravens. It's a 3:25 Central kick, so it's not like you're getting up super early. It's a later start. And then you've got a crazy travel week. But in terms of time and travel and scheduling, those kinds of things, it's very favorable. It's the opponents is the tough part.
I think it's kind of like what I mentioned earlier, just in terms of the coaching staff. It's set up to be a perfect storm. Like, if the team is functioning and operating as a lot of us expect the team to be, I mean, the schedule definitely favors us with the last 4 games not really being as tough as that third quarter of the season. I would say at the end of the year, the team that worries me the most, because I'm really not too worried about the Jags. I think it'll be a tough game, but I mean, hosting the Jaguars, I kind of like the Titans to take that with ease, as they have before when hosting the Jags. But I think the Giants are the team that I'm most worried about in that last quarter, just because they're probably going to be competing if they stay healthy. They're going to have Barkley. They're going to have OBJ. They're going to have all their weapons. And I think they'll be pushing for the NFC East title. So it's not going to be a game that they're going to want to lose. So I think that's going to be a big slugfest, bigger than a lot of people might have penciled in thus far. But
that's a good observation, Mo, because if you look at all the decisions they've made in the offseason, they've done stuff for a run now, not a we're building down the road thing, because they took Barkley instead of taking a quarterback. They've bolstered their offensive line. They picked up Nate Solder from the New England Patriots. They're doing now type moves in a short window run. So I would agree with you there on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And my wife's a big Giants fan, so I kind of keep an eye on them as well.
Don't celebrate too hard, bro. You'll be sleeping on the couch that game. Don't celebrate too hard. Don't rub it in too much, bro.
Yeah, I try not to, but I've finally gotten her around to the point where she has admitted that the Titans are at least her second favorite team. And I'm taking that as a win because she's from New York, so I can't really fault her a whole lot. So I'm taking that as a win for sure.
So she's got one in the NFC and one in the AFC, right?
Exactly. And she used to say that the Bills were her AFC team just because of location.
No.
And I was like, no. At the very least, we need to compromise here. The Titans should be your AFC team, and I'm okay with the Giants being your NFC team. And so she's kind of come around because she sees the culture and the players and what we do, and she's like, I actually genuinely like them. I don't just like them because they're your team. I genuinely like them, but my dad would kill me if I was anything other than a Giants team. So it's like, all right, fine, understandable. I guess I can deal with that.
Hey, Lito, I gotta mention a story I want to tell you and Rhett. Now that you mentioned the Buffalo Bills. That's my stepdad's team, and we actually watched the Music City Miracle together. So I got to tell you guys this moment. We're sitting there at the house watching the game, and I mean it's not looking good. Well, you guys obviously, Rhett, you were there for God's sakes, you were there. So here's the scenario. We're there in our little apartment, and my stepdad. The only thing he's wearing is some tidy whities and a Buffalo Bills beanie. And when 16 seconds are left, he's jumping. He was a big time Flutie fan, so he was pissed because they didn't play Flutie, right?
Yeah.
And they played Rob Johnson, but so he's jumping on the bed, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, kind of like, man, this sucks, man, And then that happened, and roles reversed, and his eyes were popping out of his head. It was like, no, what happened? And was it a forward lateral? Was it not? Oh, it was crazy. But how it shifted that quick in those 16 seconds is something I'll never forget. And he hates the Titans to this day. He cannot stand the Titans to this day.
And think about it. They just erased one of the longest postseason droughts.
Yep. Playing
Jacksonville in this year's postseason, and that is quite the tale of two different fortunes there.
Oh yeah, so while you were there live, Rhett, and got to hug Mike Keith after the infamous call, I was just gloating in front of my stepdad a little bit, man. Well, he's in a beanie and some chones, man.
By the way, thanks for that visual. That's
I had to paint the picture, man.
All of a sudden, you're Ernest freaking Hemingway of painting a picture of a man in his tidy whities. That's amazing.
I wasn't liking the picture myself anyway, man, but that's just what it was, man.
Yeah, how can you not be romantic about football? It's so great. It goes back and forth, and I love it. So overall, how do we, if you were to be forced to make a prediction of our overall win-loss of this coming season, I'm kind of in the camp of 10-6 optimistically, 9-7, 8-8 realistically. Where do you guys land?
For me, I think 11-5.
11-5. Ooh, I like that one.
I'd take that right now, Mo.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I think. 11-5.
I would tend to agree with you, Lito. I think a good year is 10-6. And maybe a 9-7 type of deal because the schedule is tough. And look, let's keep in mind, the schedule is much like a chameleon. It changes constantly. Teams that you thought were going to be powerhouses have injuries or something happens, and they don't end up being as good or whatever. And it seems to change quarter by quarter. You look at, well, that first quarter was tough. Well, maybe the next one is tougher, or maybe the next one's, it would be a heck of a story if that third quarter of the season where you have 2 Monday Night Football games and 3 out of the 4 on the road and that whole deal, if you come out of that with a winning record, then, you're probably going to make some postseason play there.
Yeah.
But it constantly is changing and evolving. So we'll just have to see how it all maps out. But I would tend to agree with you, Lito.
I just can't wait. I know I keep saying that, but I cannot wait. Oh.
Yeah, my prediction is like best case scenario, 11-5.
Yeah.
If everything works how we've been discussing for the past, however long it's been, I predict 11-5.
Well, I think fingers crossed. I want your prediction to come true.
Yeah, I'll take yours over mine as well.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, it's getting to become that time of night. We'll kind of wrap it up here. And Theo, Rhett, I cannot thank you enough for coming and joining us and kicking this thing off. We're going to start to do weekly kickouts every once in a while with our podcast, and we'll always stay live and active on Twitter. But, guys, if you're not following Rhett and if you're not following Titans Radio, you're seriously missing out. Definitely give them a follow. They have such good information. They have such good insider access where if you're sitting back thinking, I wonder how they knew that. It's because we follow Titans Radio, and it's because we follow Rhett Bryan, and it's so great. So give them a follow. Make sure to kind of hit them up, be active. Rhett is absolutely amazing as a person, as an analyst, just anything. You're one of my favorite people in the world there, Rhett. I cannot thank you enough. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, for all of the state of New Mexico and all Titans fans that are not located in Nashville, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you're quite welcome, and you guys are carrying the banner for Titans of the Southwest. You are it out in your neck of the woods, as we say around here, and I'm glad to do this with you guys. And, on Twitter, I'm at Rhett B Tennessee, and of course Titans Radio is at Titans Radio, and we'd love to get a follow from you, and we'll try to keep you as informed as we possibly can.
Definitely, totally worth it. Click the follow button. No matter what you're doing right now, just don't pause the podcast. I'll give you a couple seconds. Just pick your phone up, pick it up, and go to the Twitter app. Okay, you're there. Okay, now look up Rhett B Tennessee and look up Titans Radio and then just follow them. It's easy as that. That's all you have to do, and you will have so much more information. So you're welcome, by the way. You're all welcome. Thank you so much there, Mr. Bryan, and we'll hit you up soon. I know you're once the season gets started, you're going to be completely just jam-packed with stuff and obligations that you have to do. Yeah. But, anytime you want to come on and just talk Titans, we are there, sir. We are there, and we will sit there and talk your ear off. So thank you.
That sounds good, gentlemen. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And that will wrap up this episode, guys. Make sure to give us a follow on Twitter, and follow Rhett, follow Mo, follow Titans Radio, follow everything, and you'll be on the loop for the next episode coming out. So tighten up, y'all.
Tighten up. Thanks, Rhett.
You're welcome, Big Mo.